I'm one of the practitioners at Relationships Australia WA. I'm pleased today to start a series of short videos in order to support you through the COVID-19 crisis, to offer some help around how to deal with mental health problems and generally how to stay well and how to cope better through this time. Whether you're at work or whether you're not at work, no matter what your situation, I'm really hoping that some of these questions and answers will be helpful to you. I have worked for Relationships Australia for around about 7 years, and I've worked across the organisation in many different roles. I have a deep interest in mental health, and I am a psychologist by profession. So one of the things that I'd like to start with, or the thing that I would like to start with first, is self-care. And you might ask the question, why is self-care important? What is it? Why is it important? So to begin with, let's talk about that. Self-care are activities that we intentionally do. They're things that we do to recharge our batteries, to refuel, to replenish ourselves. They're things that we do on purpose. So self-care at its heart is this intentional taking care of ourselves. Self-care is about valuing ourselves, valuing our mental health, our emotional health, and our physical health, and taking steps to look after that. We know that self-care helps to improve our mood and reduce anxiety, and of course that's so important at this time when we're all feeling the stress and the uncertainty of what lies ahead with this COVID-19 virus. Good self-care also enables us to practice valuing ourselves, and when we value ourselves, we tend to value our relationships with others and other people. So self-care in a nutshell is something that we might do for ourselves, but really we can benefit those we love, those we work with, and the community at large if we do take the time to look after ourselves that little bit better. So what isn't self-care? What do we mean by it? And maybe we can understand self-care a little better by understanding what it's not. Self-care is not indulgent, and I think many of us feel when we take the time for ourselves that we are indulgent, that we don't deserve it, or we at least don't have time for it, that there are other priorities, important things for us to take care of instead of taking care of ourselves. But in fact, self-care is necessary. It's not a luxury, it's something that we should be doing every day, these activities of self-care. Self-care is also not about the things that we might do, typically to avoid stress, and they're sort of distraction type activities, such as binging on loads of chocolate and watching endless hours of Netflix perhaps, just lazing around and letting time go by. That's not really what we mean by self-care. There are other things that we do that might help relieve stress in the short term but aren't that great for us, including spending way too much time on social media. That tends to be something that we all do or have done in the past, perhaps still do, and we know that you can spend ages just flicking through, scrolling through pages of that and really not feeling any better. In fact, social media can also make us feel worse than it did when we first started looking at it. So that's definitely not self-care, that's just avoidant behaviours. We can go to other types of behaviours to help avoid stress, such as drinking too much, eating the wrong things, and just even doing other things, even such as over-exercising, just to help relieve that pressure, relieve that stress. But it's not really good for us in the long term. Good self-care supports us for the longer run. It replenishes us, it makes us feel better, it charges our batteries up. So we need to think about whether we're avoiding or whether we're doing intentional self-care. So to get us started thinking about this, there are 5 things really to think about. The first is really think about what works for you. What's worked in the past for you with self-care? What do you like to do? Because self-care is about doing things that you enjoy. What replenishes you, maybe some hobbies that you've done, things that you do on a daily basis now that you'd like to ensure that you keep doing or even increase time doing. So make a list, perhaps, be creative. Maybe even ask your family or friends, what did I used to do that I've maybe dropped? And see if you can put some more interesting self-care things into your routine. Number 2 is write a list of activities to reduce, such as those unhelpful short-term stress relievers that I just spoke about. If we can cross those out of our lives, we'll do better. Our mood will tend to lift and we'll experience less anxiety. Number 3 is prioritise your self-care. It does take time. We have to make time for it. We have to put it in the calendar. We perhaps have to schedule some time to take care of ourselves. But this is what we need to do, because often self-care does come last and it needs to come much, much further up the list for us. Number 4 is to take note. Take note of what you're doing and what works. And by works, I mean what makes you feel replenished. It recharges your batteries. It does you good. It feels good. So make some time to take notice of those activities and how they affect you. Number 5 is really about interlacing or entwining some basic activities of self-care into your day, such as number 1, nutrition. It's important that we eat well to keep ourselves physically, mentally and emotionally sustained. Good food has a lot to do with how we feel. Number 2 is exercise daily. It's important to be able to get out, go for a walk, do whatever you can to exercise. Sometimes you'll be unable to get out, and it's important to do what you can at home. Do some yoga in front of TV perhaps. Get on YouTube. There's lots of things that you can follow on YouTube these days. But getting some exercise, getting your muscles working and your heart pumping a little bit is good self-care. Number 3 is sleep. And sleep's an interesting one because we often get sleep disruption when we get stressed. And we'll talk about how to manage anxiety in another video, but just to be mindful for now that getting quality sleep and enough sleep is important. It's important not to oversleep. And this is something that we might be tempted to do, just stay in bed, take an extra couple of hours, and we can then find ourselves sleeping too much. And that sleep then becomes one of those avoidant behaviours. And the last one, of course, is social contact. I appreciate that this can be really challenging at the moment because our normal routines and social contact has been turned upside down. We're also having much more social contact with people that we don't normally have that much social contact with, such as our families. A lot of us spend a lot of time at work, and at the moment we may not be doing that. And therefore we're thrust together in the family or with friends or with your housemates, whoever they may be. So our social contact situation is changed. We also might find that we have far less social contact, particularly if we are living alone or self-isolating alone. So these can all be stresses. So it's important that we think about self-isolation if we're in it, and social contact and what we might need. Now's a good time to think about technology, maybe using technology in a different way to keep up with family and friends and people that we normally maybe speak to on a daily basis, or that we normally meet for a coffee or go to the gym with. It's good to keep up with those people where we can. And clients too, of course, if you're working in the space. COVID-19 really is a massive disruptor. We've never come across anything like this in our lifetimes. It's certainly a unique experience, and it's hard. So we need to be mindful of looking after ourselves first and that's why I've made this video first, because if we look after ourselves, we're then in a position to take care of other people as best we can. So our routines are upset, our social activities are upset, everything is a bit topsy-turvy at the moment. So as well as those things I've talked about, you can use your imagination and your creativity to think about other self-care activities, as long as they sort of have that intentional intent behind them, and that they are about self-care. They make you replenish, they recharge you, you can feel recovered in some way once you've engaged in them. So it might be even something as simple as taking a longer shower, getting into a nice hot bath, talking somebody in your house into giving you a foot massage, getting into a hobby, doing a jigsaw puzzle, doing some things like that can be really self-nourishing and give us a little bit of time away from the stress and with a bit more focus on looking after ourselves. So I hope these ideas help, and I'd like to continue with some more questions that people have asked us that we think might be helpful to discuss. So I hope this one's been good for you, and I look forward to seeing you again.